This was not a breakup. This was a door already closed, even before anyone reached for the handle. Jenny leaving India was not a reaction, it was a conclusion she finished writing long ago. The shock was not that she left, the shock was how calm she looked while doing it. Sumit was still speaking in Tamar language, while Jenny had already moved on to never. For years, viewers watched this relationship swing between hope and delay. Promises kept stretching forward. Resistance kept standing still. And somehow, staying became the default. Until one day, staying stopped making sense. Not loudly. Not with rage. Quietly. The kind of quiet that scares people because it means the argument already ended. Before we go further, welcome back. I'm Sabrina, and you're watching TLC Drama Live. If you follow this story, you already know this one hits different. Drop your thoughts in the comments as we go, and subscribe because this arc is not done exposing truths people avoid. Here's what made this moment brutal. Jenny was steady, no shaking voice, no bargaining, no rehearsal energy. She wasn't trying to convince Sumit, she wasn't trying to convince herself. Sumit, on the other hand, looked blindsided. Not because he didn't see problems, but because he assumed time would keep fixing things the way it always had, by waiting them out. This decision didn't arrive overnight. It grew in the spaces between conversations. In the pauses after family rejection. In the silence after another reassurance went nowhere. Every time the wedding was treated like a finish line instead of a starting point. Every time safety stayed theoretical. On screen, you can see the mismatch. Jenny's body language reads finished. Sumit's words sound unfinished. He talks about fixing, explaining, trying again. She talks about living. Those are not two sides of the same plan. And this is where people get uncomfortable, because nobody cheated, nobody screamed, nobody threw a glass. The damage happened slowly, through endurance, through adaptation, through one person doing the emotional heavy lifting until it broke something inside. And here's the moment to stay with me, because what pushed Jenny to this point wasn't one fight, it was years of surviving instead of living. So ask yourself this as we move forward. When love keeps demanding patience, silence, and shrinking, when does commitment turn into self-erasure? And how did something that started as devotion become something Jenny had to escape to save herself? If you rewind the tape, nothing looks dramatic at first. No doors slammed. No insults traded. What you see instead is repetition. Waiting. The same conversations looping with softer voices and lower expectations. Jenny did not shut down in one moment. She powered down slowly, the way people do when they realize effort is no longer changing outcomes. On screen, the signs were there for anyone paying attention. Longer pauses before she answered. Less pushback, fewer questions about the future. She stopped debating timelines because debate assumes movement. She stopped asking for reassurance because reassurance stopped landing. When someone goes quiet after years of fighting, that is not peace. That is fatigue. Sumit stayed verbal. Jenny went internal. That difference matters. He kept explaining situations. She kept adjusting herself. He framed problems as temporary. She lived them as permanent. You can track it across seasons. Early Jenny fought to belong. Later Jenny tried to endure. Final Jenny stopped trying. Silence gets misread. People think quiet means acceptance. In reality, silence often means the math has already been done. When Jenny stopped reacting to family resistance, it was not because it hurt less. It was because she no longer believed reaction would change anything. That is not growth. That is resignation. The public moments tell the story. Even after marriage, nothing around her softened. The family tension stayed. The emotional safety stayed conditional. Financial stress stayed present. Marriage did not turn hostility into warmth. It did not turn uncertainty into security. It only made the cost of leaving higher. Sumit seemed relieved after the wedding, like the hardest part was over. Jenny looked heavier, like the truth had finally settled. He thought commitment ended the fight. She realized commitment locked her into it. This is where many viewers miss the shift. They wait for anger as proof of pain, but anger means hope still exists. Calm means hope already left the room. Jenny's calm was not kindness. It was closure happening in real time. Stay with this point, because the warning signs people ignore in Jenny's silence show up in relationships long before anyone walks away. By the time the wedding came and went, the question was no longer whether love existed. The question was simpler and colder. If marriage was supposed to fix everything, why did nothing feel safer after it? Marriage was supposed to change the temperature in the room. That was the promise people kept repeating, on screen and off. Once the paperwork was done, once the rituals were finished, once the label shifted from girlfriend to wife, things would settle. Respect would follow, security would grow. That belief carried a lot of weight, too much as it turned out. What actually followed was quieter and harsher. The same family resistance lingered in the background. The same sense of being tolerated instead of welcomed never fully lifted. The marriage did not rewrite the rules, it only exposed them. Jenny was still expected to bend, still expected to wait, still expected to absorb discomfort with a smile because love was supposed to make it worth it. Emotional safety stayed fragile. One wrong moment could bring tension back into the room. Financial stability stayed uncertain. Plans stayed vague. When someone lives in a constant state of maybe, the nervous system never rests. You see it in how Jenny carried herself. Less ease, more caution. Like someone bracing for impact that never fully arrives but never fully disappears either. Sumit seemed to believe marriage closed the argument. Jenny slowly realized marriage locked her inside it. That gap matters. He saw commitment as proof. She needed protection. Those are not the same thing. One is symbolic, the other is practical. And here is the uncomfortable truth this phase makes hard to ignore. Jenny kept adjusting. She softened her expectations. She lowered her needs. She reframed disappointment as patience. The environment around her did none of that work. It stayed rigid. It stayed demanding. It stayed unchanged. When one person keeps shrinking to keep peace, peace never arrives. Only quiet strain does. Jenny was not asking for perfection. She was asking for a life that felt stable, a place where she did not feel like a guest who overstayed her welcome. Marriage did not give her that, it made the lack of it louder. This is where many people realize too late that legal commitment does not equal emotional safety, and love alone does not protect anyone from long-term instability. And once that realization settles in, a heavier question starts pressing in. If nothing feels safer now, what does the future look like years from today, when energy fades, health matters more, and waiting costs more than it ever did before? There is a fear people avoid naming because it sounds selfish when said out loud. Growing older without a safety net, not emotional safety, real safety, health, money, belonging, a place where help is not conditional on approval. This fear does not show up as drama, it shows up as calculation. Jenny started thinking in years, not episodes. What happens if health declines? Who advocates for her in a system where she already feels like an outsider? What happens if income tightens? Who absorbs the shock? These are not romantic questions, they are survival questions. Ignoring them does not make them disappear, it only delays the bill. Cultural isolation plays a role here. Living somewhere while feeling unwelcome wears a person down slowly. Every interaction costs more energy. Every conflict feels heavier because support feels limited. Even small setbacks feel bigger when there is nowhere soft to land. Over time, the body keeps score, exhaustion becomes normal, anxiety blends into routine. This does not make Jenny perfect. She chose this life, she stayed longer than many people would. She believed love would bridge gaps that reality kept widening. That belief came with consequences, but acknowledging that does not erase the imbalance. Sacrifice kept flowing in one direction. Stability never came back the other way. This is where the audience has to sit with an uncomfortable mirror. How much sacrifice counts as love before it crosses into disappearance? At what point does patience stop being a virtue and start being a warning sign? Endurance gets praised, leaving gets judged, but endurance without safety erodes people quietly. You could see the shift when Jenny stopped trying to talk herself out of her fears. She stopped minimizing them. She stopped framing concern as negativity. The internal negotiation ended. The voice that said hang on a little longer lost authority. Another voice took over, the one asking if survival should feel this hard. Stay right here, because this is the point where many people recognize the difference between loving someone and losing yourself while doing it. Once that internal debate ends, nothing external needs to collapse. No fight has to happen. No permission has to be granted. The decision finishes itself. And when that happens, the next question becomes unavoidable. If she no longer negotiates with herself, how long before she stops negotiating with anyone else at all? Switch the lens and the story tightens. Sumit was never the loud antagonist people wanted. His pattern was softer and harder to confront. Delay, appeasement. The belief that if he waited long enough, problems would lose momentum. He learned how to survive conflict by postponing it. For a long time, that worked. People-pleasing looks harmless until someone else carries the cost. Sumit tried to keep everyone calm. Parents, culture, Jenny. The trick was simple. Promise movement later. Ask for patience now. Jenny became the buffer. Her flexibility absorbed pressure meant for him. Each delay felt temporary to him. Each delay felt permanent to her. On screen, you can track his comfort with reassurance. Words came easily. Fixing came later. He believed emotional commitment bought him time, and for years it did. Jenny's patience became currency. As long as she stayed, he assumed the system still worked. Avoidance does not feel like cruelty in the moment. It feels like peacekeeping. But peace that depends on one person swallowing discomfort never lasts. Sumit avoided choosing between loyalty and responsibility. He thought love would cover the gap. He thought effort could wait. The shift happens when reassurance stops landing. You can see it in his face. The familiar phrases do not slow her anymore. The emotional leverage he relied on loses value. Jenny is listening without moving. That silence hits him differently. For the first time, he cannot trade promises for time. Stay with this because this is the exact moment when delay collapses and reality collects interest all at once. When it finally clicks, panic breaks through. Not anger, not blame, panic. The look of someone realizing patience is no longer available. The safety net he trusted is gone. And once that realization lands, everything he postponed rushes back at the same time, leaving him with one question he never prepared to answer. What happens when waiting no longer works? The breaking point does not look explosive. It looks organized. Bags appear, papers get sorted, timelines get real, logistics replace arguments. That shift alone tells you everything. Jenny moves with intention. Each step feels measured, not rushed, not dramatic. Finished, her tone stays even. That steadiness throws everything else into contrast. Sumit moves faster, speaks more, reaches harder. The volume comes from him now. Not shouting, but urgency leaking into every sentence. He circles the same promises again, like repetition might turn them solid. She listens without interrupting. Listening without yielding changes the balance instantly. This is where the power flips. Not because Jenny wins an argument, because she stops participating in one. The moment someone stops bargaining, leverage dissolves. Calm becomes final. Emotional chaos has nothing to push against. You can see Sumit scrambling to catch up to a decision already made. He asks for time. He asks for delay. He asks for one more chance framed as practical planning. Jenny answers with clarity. She is not debating whether love exists. She is deciding how she wants to live. Packing is not symbolic here. It is functional. Each item placed away removes a layer of uncertainty. Logistics turn abstract fear into movement. Flights get discussed. Documents get aligned. Reality moves forward whether emotions are ready or not. Sumit's unraveling shows in the small things. Restlessness, interrupted thoughts. A need to fix everything at once. Panic does not look loud. It looks scattered. He realizes reassurance no longer buys pause. The currency changed without notice. Stay with this moment, because this is where viewers expect the familiar pattern to return and it does not. This is usually the point where Jenny would soften, where she would absorb the shock, reassure him, and slow the process. The pattern trained everyone to expect that bend. This time, it never comes. She does not raise her voice. She does not retreat. She does not offer conditions. She keeps moving forward. And that is what lands hardest. Not anger, not blame, motion without hesitation. The realization hits quietly. This is not a scare tactic. This is not leverage. This is not a test. This is departure in progress. As the last arrangements fall into place, the gap between them widens. One person trying to reverse time, one person stepping out of it. The question no longer hangs on whether she loves him. It hangs on whether love ever gave her enough to stay. The goodbye does not announce itself. No music cue, no raised voices, no dramatic pause designed for television. It happens in the quiet space where both people already know what comes next. Jenny does not posture. Sumit does not perform. There is nothing left to negotiate. This is where the story stops pretending anyone won. There is no hero angle here. Jenny is not celebrated. Sumit is not condemned. What fills the room is loss, plain and heavy, the kind that sits in the chest and does not ask permission. Jenny's calm holds, not cold, not detached. Steady in the way people get when they cannot afford to fall apart anymore. She looks at him the way someone looks at a chapter they loved but cannot reread without harm. Sumit looks at her like someone watching gravity finally work. He breaks, not loudly, not theatrically. His body gives out before his words do. Please spill out unevenly. Promises come too fast. Regret shows up without structure. This is not manipulation. This is panic meeting consequence. Jenny listens, she cries too. Caring does not disappear just because leaving becomes necessary. She holds his hand. She does not change direction. That contrast is devastating. Love still present, staying no longer possible. Stay with this, because this is where many viewers mistake empathy for reversal, and this moment does not reverse. The goodbye stretches. Not because anyone wants more time, but because endings resist being compressed. When she finally turns away, there is no final speech. No grand line, just movement. A step forward that closes a door behind her without slamming it. The real impact comes after. The absence. The home looks the same. The air feels different. Sumit sits where she used to be. Silence fills spaces once occupied by routine. Objects lose context. The quiet turns sharp. This is the emotional low point, not the departure, but what follows it. A house without her presence. Time without distraction. Consequence without delay. He is left with memories and a question he can no longer avoid. How did a relationship built on endurance leave him alone in a space that once felt full? And as the emptiness settles in, another truth creeps closer. Loss does not end when someone leaves. Sometimes it begins when there is no one left to wait for. Step back and the picture changes, not the emotions, the frame. Because while this goodbye plays out on screen, the machine around it never stops moving. Episodes air, clips circulate, social posts appear smiling at the wrong time, rumors start breathing on their own. This is where viewers feel whiplash. 1 minute grief, the next curated photos, a caption about love, a tease about return. The timing feels off because it is off. Pain does not run on a content calendar. Television does. Fans start asking questions out loud. If this was final, why the cheerful posts? If the relationship collapsed, why the hints about more screen time? If finances feel tight, why the public optimism? None of these questions mean anyone is lying. They mean two realities run at once. Private fallout, public relevance. Allegedly, pressure plays a role. When a couple steps away from the spotlight, income shifts, visibility drops, the franchise moves forward. Staying relevant requires presence. Presence requires a story, and stories do not wait for healing. This is where authenticity blurs, not because emotions are fake, but because packaging reshapes them. Real heartbreak gets edited into arcs. Pain becomes proof of relevance. Loss becomes the hook for what comes next. The uncomfortable part sits right here. Viewers want truth. Television wants continuity. Social media rewards optimism even when reality feels heavy. All three collide in moments like this. You see it in the comments. Some fans feel manipulated. Others feel protective. Some accuse Jenny of quitting too soon. Others say she waited too long. The divide grows because the framing keeps shifting. Ending or evolution. Closure or setup. Stay with this point, because this is where reality TV stops reflecting life and starts shaping how pain gets consumed. The franchise does not create heartbreak, but it does decide how heartbreak lives on screen. Silence does not trend. Resolution does not retain. Ongoing tension does. That pressure does not require villains. It only requires unfinished emotion. So the question hangs heavier now. Was this a genuine ending captured mid-collapse, or was it also a pivot point? Did the story close, or did it change form to survive the next cycle? And if heartbreak becomes the bridge to relevance, where does healing fit when cameras stay ready and the audience keeps watching? After the cameras pull back from the goodbye, the fallout moves in opposite directions. Sumit stays in the same space, surrounded by reminders. Jenny lands back in the US, surrounded by people she paused for years. Both feel loss. Both feel something else too. Sumit's world shrinks fast. Without the daily rhythm of caring for someone else, time stretches. Silence feels louder. Regret shows up uninvited. He replays moments where he delayed action, softened conflict, chose later over now. Guilt settles in layers. Not dramatic guilt, quiet guilt, the kind that keeps someone awake. On screen and in public behavior, he looks unanchored. Less certain, less buffered. The person who absorbed emotional pressure is gone, and the pressure does not disappear with her. It turns inward. Jenny's return does not read as celebration. It reads as relief mixed with grief. Relief from constant tension. Grief for a future she wanted but could not build safely. Friends fill gaps. Familiar routines return. Support feels immediate instead of conditional. That contrast hits hard. Leaving did not erase pain. It redistributed it. Jenny carries guilt too. She knows someone she loved is hurting, but guilt does not outweigh survival. And this is where endurance culture gets tested. Fans split quickly. One side says staying longer proves devotion. The other says staying too long delays healing. Both arguments sound moral, only one accounts for cost. Endurance looks noble until it starts asking someone to disappear to keep going. The idea that love requires endless tolerance sounds romantic until someone stops recognizing themselves. Staying does not always mean commitment. Sometimes it means fear of being judged for leaving. Stay right here, because this question cuts deeper than this couple and lands on how many people measure love in their own lives. What this fallout exposes is uncomfortable. Damage does not reset when someone chooses differently. Time invested does not guarantee repair. Apologies do not restore years spent waiting. Some harm is cumulative. Sumit feels this when hope for reversal fades. Jenny feels it when relief arrives alongside sadness. Both truths exist, neither cancels the other. The lesson here is not about blame, it is about limits. Love can be real, effort can be sincere, still, outcomes can break. And once that truth lands, another realization follows quietly. Some relationships do not end because love disappears. They end because staying costs too much, and the price keeps rising long after anyone admits it. This story does not wrap itself with comfort. There is no promise waiting around the corner, no hint of a reunion, no soft landing where effort suddenly pays off. What remains is consequence. Quiet, heavy, honest. Jenny does not emerge untouched. She carries grief. She carries guilt. She carries the weight of years spent believing patience would turn into safety. Still, she walks away with dignity intact. Strength here does not look loud. It looks like choosing a future where fear does not run the schedule. Sumit does not collapse into villainy, he faces something harder: accountability without a fix. The realization that love alone did not protect the person he loved. Delay did not preserve the relationship. Avoidance did not keep peace. He is left with truth instead of hope. This reframes strength in a way people resist. Strength is not staying until nothing remains. Strength is knowing when staying costs too much. Endurance feels noble until it becomes self-erasure. Leaving feels cruel until it becomes survival. Stay with this final thought, because this story stops being about Jenny and Sumit and starts being about patterns people normalize every day. This was never a tragedy built on betrayal. It was a warning built on imbalance. A reminder that love does not cancel reality. Marriage does not override safety. Patience does not replace protection. And silence does not mean peace. What makes this ending unsettling is its familiarity. No explosion, no villain, just two people who loved each other and still lost to circumstances neither fixed in time. That happens more often than anyone wants to admit. And as this chapter closes without a bow, keep this lens close. Because somewhere else in this franchise, another couple is confusing endurance with devotion. Another person is shrinking to keep a relationship alive. Another promise is being postponed. That story is already unfolding.